More than about 2 or 3 other guys, 6 months old.
No, since the Conservative we only have 3.
No more.
Peter McKay and...
I don't think it's 8.
No, it's 5 or 6 months.
No, since 2006 we have only 3.
Barrett, Cannon, and McKay.
No, that's it.
Peter McKay and John Bird and before, I guess. Anyway.
No,
anyway,
before it was another government.
Before that.
So,
Anyway, so it is very important.
Thank you for your
Always.
comments.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Yeah, any comment in response?
No, it is just comment, it's not questions. So
Yeah,
that's
great. No, I want to hear from you. I've already spoken. Yes.
Then unfortunately I have to repeat what I said before you come here. You were mentioning human rights. You know, as an active member of the community, I can tell you, I don't have a statistic, but a large part of the community doesn't believe the human rights that the conservative government is defending for Iran is not real, is not for well-being of Iranian people or people that they are here. And I mentioned a few acts of this government, you know, the beating drum of the war, the sanctions, closure of the embassy, attempting to sell the building, Persian Gulf, that is what said Arabic Gulf, you know, closure of the bank accounts, and mostly the refugees. You know, from one side, John Bird admit that Iran is the worst human rights violator. And from the other side, there are so many refugees that they are deported. I can tell you, there are their name on our website, 26 cases of order of deportation. We worked with the government, we did a demonstration in winter time, and we could have their stay. It means something is wrong in the way that the government is acting toward refugees. There is a poster here, if you can show him. Yes. Masoud Hajivan is almost 7 months he's in jail. 2 attempts to force him to go back. One attempt of suicide. His family, the finance case, everything is ruined. And we are fighting, and from the other side, Mr. John Bird proudly say that he's fighting for the human rights in Iran. And I can tell you, we don't believe that.
So you're saying this particular individual is persecuted in Iran?
No, this case is here in Canada, it's 7 months.
I know, I understand that, but if he's a refugee, then he is seeking refuge from...
Yes, and how he can prove...
From whom?
From the government of Iran. And how he can prove more than this, that it stays 7 months, and he said he prefers to pass the entire life in a jail in Canada and not coming back. And this is not enough to prove that his life is in danger? And there is something wrong with our laws. You know, ICC, Iranian Canadian Congress, sent a letter, I think is more than 3-4 months to the government and requested the moratorium on deportation. They didn't receive even an answer from the government.
they don't have to.
On the one hand, you're unhappy that we're so critical of the Iranian government, but on the other, you're saying the Iranian government is persecuting its citizens. Is that
there is no doubt for that.
So, I mean, our stand against Iranian human rights abuses is well justified. I can't comment on a particular case, but it's not politicians that decide on these matters. We have an objective system that is run by a quasi-judicial body that reviews each case on its own merits and renders judgments accordingly. It's not a bunch of politicians sitting in a room that make these decisions. So, at the end of the day, each case has a fair hearing. There are appeals, and once those appeals have been heard, then a decision is made. That is the only way the system can work.
But the politicians decide the unconditional support of Israel, and our impression, the community, is whatever you are doing under the name of human rights is supporting Israel. I don't believe that really Canada cares about the Iranian government.
What does this have to do with Israel? What does this have to do with Israel, this case?
You know, when you say human rights, when you are fighting, John Bird is one of the major things, he fights for human rights in Iran. Don't you think it's a contradictory this? They send back refugees that they escaped the country, they want to send them back.
I don't see what that has to do with Israel.
I am saying,
If the Iranian government commits human rights atrocities, I don't know how you can blame Israel.
forget about Iran because the entire world agrees there is no human rights. I am talking about Canada who pretend that he's fighting for human rights.
Yeah.
And especially toward Iran, he has a special politics. I said, it's 3 years that I'm really fighting for that. My impression and the impression a lot of people in community is that the human rights that the conservative government is defending for is not against Iran, is somehow supporting Israel. And I am not against that, the politic of the Canada toward Israel. The only thing I want to say, as an Iranian, I feel these people that escaped from the country, they have the right to stay. And I'm fighting for it, and I can tell you, the highest success that we could have, 26 people. And how come this, the way that the system is, order 26 deportation case, that the same judicial structure stopped them. And to whom I should go? Should I go to a judge or should I come to the people that represent me?
Well, we have an immigration and refugee board. I presume the case is gone there.
But I think the question is the guidelines, the enforcement, all the refugee board, they get all the guidelines from the government.
Okay, which guideline in particular do you object to?
IAD or Immigration and Refugee Act and everything passed by the Member of Parliament, which then goes to that member portfolio of that specific ministry, and then that ministry enforce whatever was passed by the government in the Parliament. Am I right? Isn't that's how it works? So what he's saying is that when the policy is set by politician in the Member of Parliament, right?
Well, which policy precisely?
Policy that
The moratorium, who decides? Is it the judges or the politicians?
Which moratorium are you referring to?
I am referring that, we have 7 countries that we don't send back refugees. Why Iran shouldn't be one of them? And who decides for that? I think Mr. John Baird is well placed to make this decision if he wants really prove that he's fighting for human rights and for the well-being of Iranian here and there.
Well, Minister Baird he's not immigration minister, but he's a foreign minister. And I think he's done a terrific job of speaking out for human rights in Iran and other countries. But if you have suggestions on how we can improve the refugee system, that is principally the responsibility of our immigration ministry. There's now Chris Alexander. Yeah. We have one of the fairest and most generous systems of refugee settlement in the world. I think CS can correct me if I'm wrong, I think Canada has the highest rate of sustained rate of refugee resettlement on earth. Other countries have short-term spikes in the refugees they take. For example, Jordan, which has something like 400,000 refugees from the Syrian war, but over a sustained period, Canada has one of the highest, if not the highest, rate of refugee and asylum resettlements of any country on earth per capita. So we are extraordinarily generous.
I'm sorry, you are answering like a politician. I'm not comparing Canada with any other country.
Well,
what it makes me sad to see the values that we had, we are losing them. Canada, it was, I choose to live here. I wasn't forced to come here. I choose Canada because for its values. But I have the feeling under conservative government, we are losing them. I don't want to compare Iran and Canada. This was a country peacekeeper, peacemaker. Now we are one of those that on the first line to go for war. Now when I travel around the world, I don't have the same impression that 25 years when I studied in France, when I was back, they were really wanted to be here. But today I don't have the same impression. And this comes from the politic of politicians And it's why I am here, and it's why I want to make it better for the country. I'm not an Iranian, I'm a real Canadian, and I think I have the obligation to fight for democracy and to bring it back.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
gentleman said one word which is, I think, very important. He said unconditional support of Israel. Regardless of what Israel does, the government of Canada says okay. So, I mean, don't we have a somewhere, you know, that we say, okay, maybe at this point you're wrong. Everything, 2 nights ago, Friday night, CFRB had a 3 hours program, and people were calling, and at the end of every call, they would ask them, say, you're a Jewish. I'm a Jewish. And the guys were saying, why should you say you are a Jewish? They said that because if you don't say that means you are condoning or you are agreeing with what Hitler did. It's getting a bit too much now. The support that this government is giving to, and this is getting people of Canada upset. People are very intelligent in this country, especially the immigrants are very, very educated coming here. They see that there is a very serious double standard when it comes to that point. I mean, after all, what is Israel giving us that we are owing them so much? Why is it that we are supporting to this extent? Because really it is getting people very upset. I read about 2 hours every day in different newspapers. And I see
I appreciate your comments, but you know, of all the nations in the Middle East, you know, Israel, in many ways, has the right to survive as a nation. It was created by the United Nations mandate in 1947. We give them that right. But even to this day, Israel still stands up on a much higher standard of human rights than compared to all the other countries in the Middle East. And what Canada does is that we support that, like we support England when during World War II, you know, on the face of a fascist takeover of Europe and you know, possibly the United Kingdom. So we support that, and we are doing the same today, as we would if you know, and we don't. Our standards are the same in supporting the human rights of freedom of expression in Tehran, as is in China, as is in Soviet Russia and Ukraine. I don't think we waver from that. I mean, you might say the appearance of it, but that's, you know, yes, that is an opinion. I mean, we still let people from Iran immigrate to Canada. We still let people from Ukraine, and we still let people from, you know, China immigrate to Canada, in spite of our differences with their interpretation of human rights of the government.
And by the way, I distinguish between Israel and Jewish people, because that's something that is the government, that's the people.
Well,
Sorry,
yes.
Minister. Maxime Bernier and David Emerson.
Ah, yes, right.
Oh yeah, very
Marx,
short
so
term.
it means that
Yes, you're right. Very good. Very good. I'm glad you did your research.
Yeah, because it is, yeah, they say that like Jim Kerry, like Hillary Clinton. On the other side, here is Lloyd Axfordy, and in Russia, they stay 20 years on all of them. It's very important for the foreign policy of
An
any
interesting
country.
point. Thank you for sharing that.
And I hear John Bernard stay on that, but we are not happy with him.
Well,
but ask it's better to be on that job for 10 years, 20 years, rather than to change.
Well, maybe your suggestion will lead to Minister Baird staying there for the next couple of decades.
Yeah, why not?
No, it's not right.
It's good, but it's good. It's better than to change it. The people.
I hope
Because
not.
At least they know what's going on, because he has changed the tone on Iran. So because he has learned that it is not what we want, it is not the same as the other people want.
Well, like all of us, we grow with the show. We're learning on our job.
He doesn't say anything. I think that
I must say that I know that your time is of limits, so is my time.
Thank you so much.
One last question.
If anybody else had a
Thank you so much for the time.
No problem. Do you have a question over there?
The lady has come here to write an essay about Willowdale, and she's witnessing a very interesting part of Willowdale today.
Interesting.
From the university.
And what school are you at?
I'm going to
Ryerson. Are you a journalism school student?
No, electrical engineering student.
Electric engineering. Interesting.
She's
Covering politics.
She's actually from Afghanistan, right?
Great. Welcome to
From
Canada.
Afghanistan.
It's great. Are you in your undergrad or your master's?
I'm undergrad
Okay, what year?
for 4th year.
Is it tough?
Oh.
Yeah, one of my very best friends did electrical engineering. He found it very tough.
Very tough,
Very
I know
tough.
that course.
Yeah.
I'm working as student.
You know, Minister, we have a good relation, Iranian community have a good relation with Jason Kelly,
Yes.
with Peter Ken, because I remember that I was the first one that I interviewed him. Always, even if they stand against anything in Canadian value,
Yeah.
but because he's very close to all the communities. Mr. John Bird has never ever been in any of Iranian Canadian community event with journalists, and it is a wake point for the
I think you'll really enjoy meeting him.
You enjoy it.
not to us, but see, this is the
Very
same
nice.
as a story. You don't
He's a
change
very
your
good
mind
man.
because of it told, but at least you have to get perspective at what is going on. Otherwise, none of the government change the policy because of a group or some specific group. Otherwise, it is the interest of the party, interest of the country, and that's it. But at least to open the dialogue, to open the better understanding of the both
Sure.
parts.
I know the challenge is that with being Minister of Foreign Affairs has to be not just all across the country, but all around the world. So it becomes physically difficult to be in every community. But I know that he works very hard and does a lot of outreach with Muslim Canadians whom he represents in his riding of Nepean, and people from all backgrounds. So I think that we're all well served by him in foreign affairs.
And Minister, I hate to cut you off, but I do need to get you out of here to our next event.
Already?
Already.
Yes, thank you so much.
Already what?
They have to go to other.
That's good.
Where are we off to?
Thank you so
Off
much.
to- All right, so we're going to a Tamil celebration tonight.
Good.
Yeah, down in Markham.
With Tamil celebration.
Tamil celebration.
Is it good Tamil food too?
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, you have to earn my keep somehow. So, well, thank you for coming together.
Indeed, thank you
It was
for
always
this very, very interesting
Absolutely.
meeting that we had. This is actually how it should be.
Lots of good conversation.
I think all of you
Failed
have the
refugee
tenacity to
claimant.
stay until the very end.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry I was a little bit late.
That's okay, thank you so much.
Go to the court and ask the judge whether he should stay.